let me be very clear to all of you, and I've been very clear to the president. He bears responsibilities for his words and actions. No ifs, ands, or buts. I asked him personally today, does he hold responsibility for what happened? Does he feel bad about what happened? He told me he does have some responsibility for what happened. And he needs to acknowledge that.
In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, Trump denied taking any responsibility for what happened at the Capitol on January 6th. At the top of the show, we talked about what these tapes mean for Kevin McCarthy, but what about Donald Trump? And what happens now that the 1-6 committee has filed its latest motion in court directed at Mark Meadows and implicating several others? Let's bring in my panel to talk about all of this. Michael Steele is here, the former chairman of the RNC, and he's an MSNBC political analyst. And we also have on set Cynthia Oxney, a former federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst. Cynthia, I want to start with you. First, I want to play some comments from the January 6th committee member Adam Schiff talking to CBS News about McCarthy saying that Trump accepted some responsibility for the attack. Listen to this.
Why is that revelation important to your committee?
I think it is very important that Kevin McCarthy has evidence the former president acknowledged bearing some responsibility for that attack on the Capitol. This is an admission of guilt by the former president.
And in that overnight court filing from the January 6th committee, the House's general counsel said, quote, despite this and other warnings, President Trump urged the attendees at the January 6th rally to march to the Capitol to take back your country. That sounds like an admission of guilt, in my opinion, by Donald Trump. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, you're right. But the problem is, where is it going to be admitted? What court of law, right? Because admissions are only, I mean, it's going to be worth something for history. It's worth something for the politics. But from a legal point of view, it's only worth something if there's a lawsuit, if there's a case, if there's a criminal indictment. And that doesn't look likely to me. Assuming the president was indicted and McCarthy was a co-defendant, or you could get those statements in. But that doesn't look likely to me. And so I think it's more of a political story because of that, and a story for history.
Even though the DOJ brought on a new prosecutor kind of on the stealth to look into possible criminal conduct that was committed outside of just what happened on the day of January 6th,
I completely agree. I mean, I want them to do it. Mm-hmm. My sources tell me there's reluctance by the Attorney General, even though the line prosecutors are pushing it. They've got 131 new prosecutors. They have this other new prosecutor who's looking at the Trump issue. I think you're talking about the guy Wisdom from Baltimore. So there are signs that they are doing something. But let's not kid ourselves. It's been a long time. We don't have any of the fake electors in the grand jury. They should be there. We don't have any of these other people in the grand jury. And the DOJ has not taken over this investigation like a normal prosecutor would do. So as much as I want it to happen, and as much as I look in the tea leaves and see little signals that maybe they're starting to do something, I think we also need to be honest with our viewers. There is a reluctance by the Attorney General, as far as I can tell, to get in the hornet's nest of the politics of a full-blown investigation that directly and is squarely looking at the president. And I think, you know, it's a mistake. It was sort of like during the Mueller time, we're like, ooh, something's coming. Nothing came. And so I think it's a mistake to promise people, look, the Attorney General's hired a guy from Baltimore. It's seconds away. We're going to see something. Okay, that's not what's happening. It is very slow. And as you know, this is a very difficult prosecution of the president because he's very slippery and very good at it. And he doesn't write anything down, and he, you know, is rarely recorded. So I think it's a very difficult prosecution. What I see is some people at the bottom of that mountain putting on their shoes, but nobody's climbing up that mountain just yet.
Gotcha. Somebody, though, who is not hesitating about getting and diving into the politics would be Michael Steele. So, Michael, let's talk about the politics of this, because that's what Cynthia was just mentioning, right? It's not just what McCarthy waffled on that he thought Trump was going to do. In fact, he talked about Pence pardoning Trump, Michael. And we know you don't talk pardons unless you did something criminally wrong. So what does it mean that a top Republican like Kevin McCarthy had a moment where he seemed to have some clarity about Trump, and then he folded like a cheap suit?
Well, that says to me one of two things. Either he was lying to us about that clarity or he's lying now. And I think in Kevin's case, it's all been a lie. This is all about how Kevin is interested in one thing, preserving Kevin's position politically to become the next Speaker of the House. That's the only thing that matters. And so in that moment of clarity in early January, where he's talking to his caucus, he was essentially playing one end against the other. I don't know. I doubt that he even said anything to Donald Trump. The reason being that he would fold like a cheap suit in front of Donald Trump. This is not a man who's going to stand at Donald Trump and tell him, sir, you must resign. Sir, you should take responsibility. So I believe Donald Trump when Donald Trump said, Kevin McCarthy never said that to me. Kevin's been lying to everybody because Kevin's about positioning Kevin. And so, you know, in many respects, he sort of took on the Trumpian attributes ascribed to both Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, where he's now lying little Kevin. And the reality for us politically is this is the man that the country's about to make the next Speaker of the House. So if he won't stand up to Trump and he'll lie to his caucus, where do you think we fit into all of this? So I think Cynthia's exactly right. That frustration on the judicial side, on the jurisprudence and the process of the law, is equally frustrating on the political side. And so we're going to watch at the end of this. This committee goes away come January of next year when Kevin McCarthy gavels in the new Congress. And they start prosecutions of Democrats and Biden and Hunter and all of that. Because that's the end game here. That's the inside promise. Because there's a lot of grift to be made and a lot of voters to secure through that political effort.
Michael, very quickly, I only have about 30 seconds before we go to break. I did want to ask you, if this ends up being the ultimate jury of the American public, not in a criminal sense, but in a political sense, what are those open hearings, those public hearings we're supposed to have in June going to look like? Because Raskin says it's going to blow the roof off when they do this presentation.
Again, I go back to what Cynthia just said about what we've been here before. Don't come out and promise me something's going to blow the roof off. Just blow the roof off and let us come to that conclusion. Like, oh, my God, that was amazing. The reality of it is now you're setting up this hearing to produce something that it actually may not produce for a number of reasons politically. But then again, on the back end, what does the Justice Department do with all of that? And so I think the American people could be very frustrated by August or September with this process if they are not carefully crafting exactly how they're going to come to the country with this evidence.
Cynthia, my team's been very kind. They're giving me a little bit more time. So I do want to ask you some major new developments tonight, overnight, involving former Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and his lawsuit against the 1-6 committee to prevent him from turning over documents and giving more testimony. Late last night, the January 6th committee filed this motion for summary judgment, asking the court to reject Meadows' legal challenges to their authority. In the filing, the committee claims that Meadows was told that January 6th could get violent. Trump went ahead with the rally anyway. The committee also claims that Meadows was told the plan was having alternate electors, which you mentioned, right? But he was told it wasn't legally sound, but they went ahead with it anyway. What are the major takeaways from this actual motion? Because this is actually in court.
Right. Well, I think the summary judgment will be granted, and it will be upheld on appeal. That's number one. And then the Justice Department is going to have to start making some decisions. I mean, he was referred for prosecution in December, and still nothing. Now, there's an argument, well, if you're going to prosecute him for something else, maybe you wait. But if you're going to do that, come on, get moving. That's all I can say. Get moving. I'm tired of waiting. And I think the American people are tired of waiting. It's time for some results. I mean, not only have the electors not been done, but in this summary judgment, there's a lot of new information. It's on the web. Everybody should read it, even though it's very long. There's a lot of information about the trying to kick out the Attorney General and use these fake voting machines, and everybody was going to resign. There's a lot of information in there. A lot was going on, and it is time to move from the January 6th committee, which I adore and support, to the Department of Justice down the street. The time has come to climb the mountain.
And the time has come for me to go to a break. My panelists are going to stick around because when we come back, we're going to be talking about the very convenient timing of Marjorie Taylor Greene's sudden amnesia.